Good evening. My name is Nancy Sherman, and I am chair of the newly formed League of Women Voters of Great Neck, MAL Unit. Welcome to our virtual forum for the Democratic primary for New York State. With us tonight are U.S. Congressional District 3 candidates, Melanie D'Arrigo, Jon Kaiman, Josh Lafazan, Reema Rasool, and Robert Zimmerman. Only registered Democrats may vote in a Democratic primary. Recent rulings allow voters who change their registration by August 11th, which is today, to vote in this primary. The League of Women Voters is always nonpartisan. We never support or oppose any political party or candidate. Our mission is to educate you, the voters, and to engage you fully in our democracy. For example, by nonpartisan registration of voters and distributing voter guides in multiple languages. Our forums give candidates an opportunity to address you and answer your questions. This forum is a team effort by the Leagues of Great Neck, Port Washington-Manhasset, East Nassau, and New York City. We are always looking for people who believe in civil discourse and who believe in showing respect to everyone and listening to all sides of an issue. Our work at the League also includes advocating with legislators on issues where we have conducted extensive studies and reached consensus. These include not only voting in elections, but also healthcare, environment, and climate. We hope you will consider joining the Great Neck League. We want to build a vibrant league in Great Neck representing and serving everyone in our diverse community. Find out more about the League on our Facebook page at lwv.greatneck, where the membership link is available, or email us at lwv.greatneck@gmail.com. Please let us know how you would like to help us build our community. Nancy Rosenthal will moderate this evening. Nancy is first Vice President of the League of Women Voters and also lead of the New York State Voters Service, and a member of the management team of the League of Women Voters of Nassau County. Nancy is not eligible to vote in Congressional District 3. I have asked the candidates to leave their cameras off until the moderator asks them to turn the cameras on, which will be just before the opening statements. Thank you, Nancy. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Nancy. Good evening. As your moderator tonight, I'd like to begin by reading the rules that will govern this forum. Candidates, please keep your cameras off until I ask you to turn them on. The procedures for tonight. The moderator will be a member of the League of Women Voters from outside the district. Candidates' opening statements will be given in alphabetical order. The same order will be for opening and closing statements. Each candidate will be allowed 3 minutes for an opening statement. After all candidates have spoken, the moderator will open the meeting with questions submitted electronically before and during the forum. All submitted questions will be vetted prior to being asked so that duplicative, personal, abusive, or biased questions can be discarded. Each candidate will be given 1.5 minutes to answer each question. At the moderator's discretion, the time for a response may be reduced as long as it is the same for everyone. There will be no rebuttal. All candidates will be given an opportunity to answer every question. The moderator will attempt to rotate the order of responses for each question. A league member will act as a timekeeper. Tonight, our timekeeper is Marnie Schlesinger. 1/2 minute from the end of any given time period, the timekeeper will warn the speaker by a pre-arranged signal. Marnie? When the time is up, the speaker will be allowed to finish the sentence. Repeatedly speaking past the deadline may result in a candidate being muted. Marnie, can you show that stop sign, please? Thank you. Candidates will be have 2 minutes for a closing statement. Since the purpose of the meeting is to determine the candidate's views, No substitute for an in-person speaker will be allowed to appear should a candidate be unable to attend. No written or recorded statement may be provided in lieu of active participation by a candidate. Forums require 2 or more candidates for each seat to be present. The use of props, charts, or visuals and the display of campaign literature is prohibited. The League maintains the right to record the forum and publish it on an LWV-controlled electronic page. No other recording will be allowed. No partial transcript or recording may be published without written permission from the League. The candidates and their campaign managers have all agreed to these rules. Candidates, please all turn on your cameras now. Good evening. We will begin opening statements with Ms. D'Arrigo. Please unmute yourself and begin.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. Thank you to the League for organizing tonight's forum. My name is Melanie D'Arrigo. I'm running to be the next member of Congress and the first Congresswoman ever to represent New York's 3rd Congressional District. I'm a lifelong New Yorker. I grew up in Suffolk County, started my family in Queens, and now I'm raising my 3 amazing children in Nassau County in Port Washington. I spent my career in preventive health as a strategist and a manager, looking at data patterns to identify problems and inform solutions in population health management. I'm also a community organizer. I co-founded an LGBTQ nonprofit in North Hempstead, where we organized the very first Pride celebration in the history of the town. I also served as the Medicare for All rep for National Nurses United Nursing Union, fighting for safe staffing for nurses and educating on the benefits of universal health care. I'm a delegate for the National Organization for Women, and I'm also an endorsed candidate. I'm a longtime Moms Demand Action volunteer and the only congressional candidate in the state of New York to be endorsed by Everytown for gun safety. I'm ready to bring a fresh new voice to the halls of DC and fight relentlessly for our families. But in order to do that, we must end the corruption in Congress by getting big money out of politics. That is why I'm proud to be running on the strongest anti-corruption platform in the race to restore the voice of the people back to the seat of New York 3. And I'm proud to be rejecting all corporate PAC money because my campaign is not for sale. In a time when our civil rights and human rights are being rolled back, this moment requires a fighter, a representative who will go to the mat for our district, our country, and our communities. I challenged Tom Suozzi in the Democratic primary in 2020 and again in this cycle before he left the race. And I did so because I knew then what I know today. Our district deserves a representative who will legislate for us, not corporate lobbyists. I'm the only one at this forum tonight who had the courage to step up and run to challenge the corruption then. And that is why you can count on me to continue to fight for what is right now and in the future. I'm running to protect democracy, legislate to make our lives better, and safeguard a future for our children. This moment requires unbought, uncompromised leadership free from corporate PAC money and real estate developers. As the candidate with the most organizational endorsements and the broadest coalition of support, I am ready to take on the issues that matter most to our families. Thank you very much, and I look forward to your questions this evening.
Thank you. Mr. Kaiman. You're on mute, sir. And let's start the time again, please.
Very good. Thank you to the League, and thank you for hosting the debate tonight. I'm running for Congress because I think that the country right now is in a place where people are losing confidence in our institutions, our government. We are not sure whether or not we can count on our own future. I have a history of public service. I've been involved. I've been elected. I've represented people at a very local level. I've worked in the state government. I've had the ability to utilize my own resources, my skills, my own personal experience in government. But ultimately, what I've done is I've been able to put myself forward, gain the experience that one needs, and now we're looking at a country that is on the brink. When I served as town supervisor, I had a community that 230,000 people strong, where we needed to represent our seniors because they were trying to navigate a hard economic time. We created Project Independence so that seniors can age in place. People were giving up on government because they were paying money in taxes and they thought that they weren't having a response from their government. We created 311. 311 gives us the ability to hold people accountable, to make sure they can reach your government, get the same response every time. I worked on investing dollars in our environment. I worked on making sure that we were providing the services that we need. I had the opportunity to go to the state when the state was reeling after Superstorm Sandy and make sure that we understood how government functioned and take billions of dollars given from the federal government to the state so that people can rebuild their homes. And they could do it in a way that would be stronger, that we would be able to be more resilient, that we would be able to understand that climate change is having an impact on our communities, and that local government in general, leaders have an obligation and an ability to have an impact on how we survive future impacts and future storms. I would eventually come to Suffolk County as deputy county executive. And here I've worked with our police, I've worked with our advocates, I've worked with people who are suffering from opioid addiction and people who are impacted by a number of systemic problems that they face in our community, in our county, and on Long Island. And I've had the opportunity to make change. I've done it by partnering and working with leaders. I've done it by talking to the people who are impacted. I've done it by understanding how the rules work and how government can make a difference. We know now that Congress is in a place where people are losing confidence. Our systems, our institutions are in jeopardy from the left and from the right. We need to make sure that people understand that if we talk to each other, if we work together, if we understand the rules, if we make sure that we appreciate the significance of our institutions, our country, where we come from and where we can go, we can tackle the problems that we're facing. I believe I have the ability to do that. And I believe I would be a person as your next congressman who will give you faith and confidence in our American system of government. And I hope you support me for United States Congress. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lafazan?
Sure. Thank you so much. And good evening, everyone. My name is Josh Lafazan, and I'm running to be your next member of the United States Congress. I'm proud to have served in local government for a decade. I ran for the Syosset School Board at age 18 to take on an overpaid superintendent and won as a high school senior. And I was reelected to that position with a supermajority. I ran for the Nassau County Legislature at age 23 because the county executive and town supervisor were simultaneously indicted, and I wanted to take on corruption at the local level. And I won. And I'm ready to serve at the federal level. I'm running for Congress because we need to keep this seat in Democratic hands. And I know that I'm the best Democrat to do it. My county legislative district is not bright blue. It's red. Trump won my district, but I was reelected twice, including in 2021, when Democrats in Nassau suffered terrible losses at the county and town levels. I win tough races and I win them in tough years. And it's important because there's a lot at stake in this election. We're seeing firsthand the harm that Washington can do to all of us back at home. I'm going to Washington to fight for the issues that Nassau County and Northeast Queens cares about. Not only do I know how to get elected, but I know how to deliver for my constituents. I've passed more bills than anyone in the legislature. I've secured millions of dollars in grants for our public schools. I've held open public forums in every town I represent. And my campaign is resonating with voters because we've been focused on the issues: keeping abortion legal and safe in New York State, taking illegal guns off our streets, making our communities more affordable and getting inflation under control, delivering affordable healthcare and reducing the cost of prescription drugs. And I have never and will never support defund the police. I'm so proud to have our Congressman Tom Suozzi's support in this primary. Tom knows that I'm the candidate who will go to Washington and work with anybody who has the same agenda of getting things done for the people we represent. So I look forward to taking your questions, and thanks again for having me.
Thank you. Ms. Rasool?
Thank you so much for having me. My name is Reema Rasool, and I am not a politician. I'm a daughter of immigrants, a mother of 2 teenage boys. I am an entrepreneur. I'm a lifelong New Yorker, and I'm the founder of a nonprofit national trade association that's been advocating for women and immigrant business owners for over a decade. I'm running for Congress because I know that things can be a heck of a lot better than they are now. We have the answers. We just need representatives committed to our community, not their own wealth and their own fame. Listen, let me tell you that we have a political class in this country on both sides of the aisle who have only become more greedy, more corrupt, as our nation has become even more socially divided and economically devastated. The people of our country deserve better than the reality style show politics that we currently have to put up with. The behavior that some of our elected officials display on a national stage is embarrassing and childish, and unfortunately has become normalized. What are we teaching our children when these are supposed to be our leaders? What's happened to respect and integrity of political office? This is absolutely not a reflection of who we are as Americans. I believe that more regular citizens like me need to join into our political process and run for office. We need people who are not career politicians, because I believe that we all can see where these career politicians have gotten us and how easily they can be bought. They are not representing us. They're not representing our children, our families, our needs. They're only representing and shilling for their big money donors at our expense. I believe that our representatives should be focusing on redefining and lowering small business taxes, equal education for all of our children so that we're providing a fair playing field for everybody, healthcare for all, codifying Roe v. Wade, economic justice, social justice, and environmental justice for all of our communities. We are tired of dealing with price hikes because of corporate gouging, crumbling infrastructure, and limited access to healthcare. How many students are returning to school buildings with poor infrastructure and outdated textbooks? How many students aren't going back to college this semester because they can't afford it? Our education system needs major reform. No one should be in predatory debt because they want to go to school. In this year, in 2022, teachers and frontline workers should not be paying the same tax rate as CEOs and those at the top. New Yorkers deserve tax reforms that make wealthy corporations pay their fair share and cut taxes for the middle class, for small businesses that are trying to rebuild and survive while we're still in this pandemic. I know far too well that too many people in New York 3 are struggling to make ends meet. I am running for Congress because I do not trust these politicians with my children's future. I do not trust these politicians with my parents' retirement. We all deserve someone real who understands the struggles of the middle class and will fight for you. And I hope that you realize that that's me.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Zimmerman.
Good evening. And I first want to thank the League for organizing this forum and bringing us together. And a special shout out to the Port Washington-Manhasset, Eastern Nassau, and New York City League, and my hometown of Great Neck as they launched their League chapter. I'm just incredibly excited for them. They're off to a great start. And the reason it's so important for the League's work and for us at this election is this is the most defining time for our nation since the Civil War. The very foundations of our democracy are on the line, threatened by extremist Republicans in Congress and an extremist Supreme Court. And the very issues that brought me into political activism are front and center in this campaign. Standing up for voting rights, standing up to deal with the tragedy and the crisis of our environment being so devastated by severe weather and by abuse by corporate interests. And so we have to address the climate crisis, address the pandemic of gun violence throughout our nation, speak up for reproductive rights for women, protecting women's autonomy and standing up for the LGBTQ plus agenda. These are the issues that brought me to the protest lines growing up and brought me to my congressman's office, where I first worked as an intern for Lester Wolf and later became a senior member of his staff on Capitol Hill. After that, working for Congressman Jim Scheuer, representing parts of this district, and then worked closely with Congressman Gary Ackerman while I was building my business. These are the issues that elected me to the Democratic National Committee, where I served for 22 years now, standing up for progressive issues and for campaign finance reform. These are the issues that brought me to the networks, where I took on the demagoguery and the lies from the extreme right wing and the misinformation campaigns they were conducting. And these are the issues that actually have defined my campaign for Congress, that have brought me to this moment. And I'm so proud and so honored to say that at this stage of the campaign, I've assembled the broadest coalition of elected officials and organized labor of any candidate running, grassroots political clubs and grassroots political activist organizations throughout our district. I'm honored to have the endorsements of Secretary of State Hillary Rodham Clinton, State Comptroller Tom DiNapoli, members of Congress like Richie Torres and Grace Meng and Greg Meeks, and members who've served us so well, like Steve Israel, Gary Ackerman, and Carolyn McCarthy. They're supporting me because they believe I have what it takes to bring the fight to George Santos, to hold on to this district in a very difficult year, a swing seat that we have to hold, and it takes building a broad coalition. The broad coalition of endorsements I've received on every level of government and from political activists throughout our district is because they believe I can bring the fight to Washington to stand up for democratic values. That's defined my life, that's defined my work. And I hope to have your confidence and your trust and earn your support during this forum. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We will now begin with the first question. Ms. D'Arrigo, after watching corporate and dark money lobbyists spend big to defeat President Biden's Build Back Better Act, how would you address corruption and campaign finance reform?
Thank you so much for the question. This is near and dear to my heart. As I mentioned, I am running on the strongest and broadest, most comprehensive anti-corruption platform. I actually wrote a proposal to deal with, to address the issues that we're facing. I think most of the Democrats here tonight would agree that we need to overturn Citizens United, and that's going to unfortunately take some time. And what we're seeing is not only a corrupted legislative body because of the influence of dark money, but now a corrupted federal court as well, because that dark money is seeping in there. Look, we need major reforms. I believe strongly in publicly financed elections. The proposal that I wrote is called the Paid By Act, Public Accountability Information Disclosure Benefiting You, which would pertain both to congressional Senate reps as well as judicial nominees. And essentially what it would do is require more transparency into the process and disclose to voters who folks are bought by. It's particularly interesting since we have a candidate here tonight who is being funded by a billionaire who lives not in this state, which is really sad, because we need representatives who are supported by the people of this district, not by billionaires who want to buy politicians so that they can pass their own agenda. We need representatives who are going to fight for the people. And from day one, that is what we have done. That's why I take no corporate money, and I'm very proud to be funded and supported by the people of this district.
Mr. Kaiman.
Thank you. Many of us are disgusted by what's going on with the Supreme Court. We look at what they're doing today and we're distraught. But Citizens United was something that happened some time ago and really was a sea change in our perspective of how campaigns are funded. The fact that a billionaire can come out and just throw hundreds of thousands of dollars into a race is not only disgusting, but it really is unfair. It's inappropriate. And so the answer really lies in public financing of campaigns. It lies in making sure that disclosure systems are worked and that we're all held accountable. I know that in the work that I've done as an elected official, a person who's had scrutiny for virtually every contribution I've received, wherever it comes from, we need to be able to disclose it. We need people to be able to see it and challenge it and question it, and then be able to explain it. We need to make sure that there are limits, and those limits are withheld and so or upheld. And I think that the start to our future is to make a change in our Supreme Court so that we can re-examine how financing works in our system of government. It's not working today. There's too many variables that are independent of who's running, what they stand for, and the people don't have fair access to their own candidates based on others who are overwhelming the system. And so I think it starts with Citizens United. I think the Supreme Court is in a crash course, and we in a direction that needs to be changed. And so I think it starts there.
Thank you. Mr. Lafazan.
Sure. Thank you for the question. And you mentioned campaign finance and corruption, and there's so much that we need to do. And I was proud on the heels of an indictment of our county executive, working with our county executive and the legislature to successfully push for an inspector general here in Nassau County, to push for further disclosure requirements. And there's so much we could do at the federal level. Of course, we need public financing of elections so people of all different backgrounds can run for office. We need to overturn Citizens United, which was one of the many disastrous decisions that this Supreme Court has ruled. But further, we need to do more. We need to end gerrymandering, which has left the number of competitive districts in this country into the double digits and absolutely removes choice from so many voters in all districts across the country. We need term limits, and I've signed the term limits pledge, and we need term limits in the House and the Senate. We need to ban members of Congress from trading stocks, and I've sold all the securities I have in anticipation of serving in Congress. The appearance of impropriety, just the appearance enough, can erode the trust that people have in government, and no member of Congress should be trading securities. We need to ban contractors from contributing to politicians, and we need beefed up financial disclosure for donors. So there's so much work to be done, and the work needs to start immediately.
Thank you. Ms. Rasool.
I guess I just want to start by saying that we need to make elections fair again. I truly believe that right now it's so unfortunate that in this country, you can buy an election if you are wealthy enough to do so. You basically, your worth as a candidate is literally equated by how much money you can raise. And I don't think that's fair. I think money has just become everything, and we're not looking at people. We're not looking at their issues. I mean, I am the most underfunded candidate in this race, and I want to be completely honest. The only reason I'm still going is because I have a team of volunteers. I have extremely passionate volunteers helping me out. Otherwise, I would not have been able to be in this race for so long. I truly believe that we need more people, more representation of every kind of American citizen that we have. And unfortunately, for people like me, for minority candidates, it's very difficult when you're coming in as a first-generation American. You don't have that network that really can fund you the way that you need to be funded in elections these days. I agree with everything Mr. Rigo said. I agree with everything Mr. Kaiman said. We need public funding. We need to overturn Citizens United. But most of all, I truly think that we need to just change what we think makes a candidate viable, which right now is extremely equated to how much money you can raise. And I just don't think that's fair. I don't think it's fair that an outsider can come in, a super PAC can come in and throw hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars to sway an election.
Thank you very much. Mr. Zimmerman.
You know, every politician during every election condemns the campaign finance system in our nation. They all speak about how unfair, especially Democrats, always speak about how unfair and corrupt it is. And they all talk about overturning Citizens United. They talk about public financing of campaigns. They talk about full disclosure. They're all well and good. And they're all hoping it never happens. So what can we do as candidates to change this corrupt system, the way our campaigns are financed, that undermine our democracy? As a Democratic National Committee member, I fought hard, and I still fight hard, to get corporate money out of politics. As a candidate for Congress, I refuse to take corporate political action committee money. The very system where members of Congress bankroll their campaigns from the very industries they're supposed to oversee and regulate is corrupt by its very face. And I'm very pleased to say that in this campaign, Melanie D'Arrigo, Reema Rasool have joined me in that mission, not to take corporate political action committee money, because that's got to stop. We also have to stand up through our deeds and our actions and protest the kind of influence outside money has. Mr. Lafazan, in fact, has received support from a dark money super PAC, funded by cryptocurrency billionaires that are putting $5,000 into his campaign. That by its nature undermines our entire democracy. We should be condemning this kind of behavior and working hard to change it, because frankly, it's not just about cleaning up our campaign finance system. It's about saving our democracy and restoring the integrity to our democratic system.
Thank you. Mr. Kaiman, question number 2 begins with you. The United States of America is the only country on earth where people go bankrupt due to medical expenses. If elected, what would you do to ensure that we have affordable health care for all?
You know, I think we changed the landscape of healthcare when President Obama passed the Affordable Care Act. There were limitations to that act. There was a need to change it. There was a fear that if it went back to Congress, it would be killed and ultimately dismantled. And so we never had the opportunity, or Congress never had the opportunity to do that. There's been threats on its survival, but it has survived. It survived the courts. I would expand the Affordable Care Act. I would make sure that we treat healthcare as something that is universal. Everyone should have access to healthcare. I do not support Medicare for all as an option at this point. I believe that erasing private health insurance for tens of millions of Americans is not something that the country would stand for. I don't think that's a viable solution at this point. I would support giving Medicare greater options, a public option. I would support expanding when one is eligible for Medicare. I would make sure that we reduce the cost of prescription drugs. I think that's actually just passed Congress, and so there's hope for that right now. So I think at the local level, we've done things here, and where I've run governments to make sure that people have access to health centers, so that everyone, no matter who you are or where you're from, you have access to some level of healthcare. But we do need to expand it. We need to do more. And so it's the Affordable Care Act, expanding it in a way that brings more people under the fold.
Thank you. Mr. Lafazan?
Sure. Healthcare is a human right. Everyone should have access to quality, affordable healthcare. And 31 million Americans lack healthcare, and tens of millions more can't afford the plans they have. We know we need urgent federal action. On the local level, as county legislator, I'm working and have successfully worked to protect Nassau County's only safety net hospital, Nassau University Medical Center, from closure to protect those most vulnerable among us. And I helped work with nonprofits and service providers to offer life-saving healthcare services from mammograms to skin cancer screenings, free of charge for my constituents. And at the federal level, here's what needs to happen. We need to make the ACA stronger, adding a public option which uninsured Americans would be automatically enrolled and people with employer-sponsored insurance would be permitted to join. We need to expand federal subsidies for private insurance purchased on the Obamacare marketplaces to keep premiums low. We need to increase the income eligibility cap for federal subsidies for people purchasing health insurance, so our middle-class families here in Nassau and Queens aren't cut out from federal assistance. We need to reform Medicare by expanding to include health, dental, and vision, and we need to end surprise billing and bring transparency to healthcare spending once and for all. Healthcare is still one of the only industries in the country where you don't know exactly what you're getting and what you're paying for. It's time we bring transparency back to the process. I would do it by ending surprise billing and bringing sunlight into the hospital system. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Zool?
I am completely supportive of a single-payer universal healthcare system that would be Medicare for all. Under this plan, every American gets extensive health care that would include primary health, dental, vision, hearing, mental health, home care, prescription coverages, and reproductive health. Study after study shows that a single payer Medicare for all system would save over 60,000 lives annually, and it would save our country $500 billion annually. I truly believe that there is no morally justifiable reason that we cannot beat big pharmaceutical greed and implement Medicare for all. I believe that we also need to improve access to pediatric health services. And in Congress, I would require the Health Resources and Services Administration to award grants to children's hospitals and providers so that those grants could be used to improve pediatric healthcare and infrastructure. Also, as a mom, I see with my own children, their friends, we have a major mental health pandemic coming. We have a lot of issues that we still have not addressed after this pandemic. And I believe that we have to make sure that mental health coverage is available to everyone. Mental health coverage right now is almost a luxury, and it's absolutely a shame. And we need to prepare ourselves for what's about to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Zimmerman? You're on mute, sir.
Okay. I also proudly stand for Medicare for all. During this healthcare pandemic that we just experienced and still working through, 23 million Americans lost their healthcare during a healthcare crisis because they lost their jobs. That's unacceptable. And so you can talk about being healthcare being a human right, and if it is, then we have to guarantee healthcare for every American. The idea that we shouldn't be reciting the Republican talking points that means a federal takeover of healthcare. That's not the case. And when we talk about Medicare for those who want it, as some are suggesting, we're talking about those who can afford it. So we have to put in place, I believe, guaranteed healthcare for every citizen. And there are different models to look at. One model being proposed, I think has a lot of merit, is having, like for those on Medicare, having baseline Medicare coverage, and they can have supplemental insurance if they like that, like people on Medicare presently do. But we have to recognize that, in fact, it is not just a great investment or a humane action to take, it's important for our economy. I'm a small business owner. We pay for healthcare for all our employees. It's the single biggest expense we have in business. And that's true for a lot of businesses. So therefore, I'm proud to stand up for Medicare for all and provided it's the humane step to take. And it's the first step, in fact, to providing protection for so many families and giving them economic relief from the crisis of a healthcare crisis.
Thank you. Ms. D'Arrigo?
Thank you so much. Well, as I mentioned earlier, I am a loud and proud supporter of Medicare for all, but I want to just talk to the voters for a moment and explain a little bit about what Medicare for all is. There's a lot of misinformation. Medicare for all isn't Medicare. In fact, it is a much more robust, comprehensive healthcare system that would include dental, hearing, vision, long-term care, mental health, no co-pays, no co-insurance. It is a system that puts everyone in and leaves no one behind. I mean, currently the US is one of the few countries that relies on a private for-profit healthcare system, where insurance companies' motives to turn a profit and gatekeep access to doctors and treatments has resulted in tens of thousands of deaths each year and has resulted in 72 million Americans going into medical debt. And frankly, it has allowed us to become ranked dead last in health outcomes. What we're doing right now is not working. And the idea that Medicare for all is government run is hogwash. It's not government run, it's government financed. And I'd like to make the point that the government already finances 2/3 of all healthcare in this country. Lastly, I'll quickly just address the public option. Mr. Lafazan mentioned 30 million people roughly are uninsured in this country. The public option would still leave millions uninsured and many, many millions underinsured. Not to mention, it would cost way more than our current system and Medicare for all. One last point. Medicare for all is the fiscally and morally responsible path forward. It will be cheaper than our current system, and it'll save 68,000 lives a year. Thank you. I was just finishing the sentence. I was abiding by the rules.
No comment. Okay, Mr. Lafazan, you'll be question number 3. There is a significant veteran population on Long Island. What would you do to have the federal government do more to support, expand, and protect our veteran population's medical benefits, housing, and employment?
Sure, I have a non-negotiable belief that those who serve this nation in uniform deserve our highest commitment and admiration. And what that means is more than rhetoric. It means that we should fight just as hard for our veterans when they return as they fought for us abroad and at home. And so here's what I've done as a county legislator. I sponsored the Dignity for Our Heroes package to build housing for homeless veterans right here at Mitchell Field. I outlawed housing discrimination for veterans using federal VASH vouchers. I passed the Hiring Our Heroes Act with bipartisan support to help unemployed veterans gain jobs right here in Nassau County. And I worked to expand access to mental health care and health services for our veterans. And here's what I'll do. In Congress, I will work tirelessly to prevent the closure of the North Shore VA Medical Center, which was an outrageous idea by the federal government. Provides healthcare to hundreds of veterans from across Long Island. I'll help modernize Veterans of Foreign Wars, those VFWs and American Legions, to accommodate the needs of our veterans. I'll expand tax credits for employers who hire veterans to ensure our heroes have stability after their service. I'll build on the Dignity for Our Heroes package that I wrote as a legislator so that the federal government partners with municipalities to build housing to end veteran homelessness once and for all. And I'll work across the aisle just as we finally got the PACT Act passed. And it's a shame that it took that long, but I'll work across the aisle and build bridges to make sure that veterans have the health care they need. Our commitment goes far and above when they end their service. Our commitment is for a lifetime, and we need more than words, we need action.
Thank you. Ms. Rasool?
I absolutely agree with what Mr. Lafazan was saying. I truly believe that, we have a lot of lip service in this country. We are, the messaging in this country tells us that, Republicans, they back the blue, they care about our veterans, and, Democrats, they're just, here. And I think we see exactly what's happening because we saw what happened with the PACT Act. We saw who was stopping that. And I think politics has gotten in the way of everything in this country where it's all about a win or a lose. The fact that we have to even sit here and talk about what would we do for our veterans, these are the people that protect our country, protect our democracy. We need more people in office that are just genuine people who understand that we need to take care of the people that take care of us. The fact that we have to sit here and discuss what we would do for veterans means that there are people who are voting against help for our veterans in all of these different aspects. And that is a shame. It's a shame. I truly believe that Medicare, we just talked about Medicare for all. I would work relentlessly for Medicare for all. We have a homeless homeless pandemic with our veterans in this country. We have a housing crisis generally. I honestly believe that we just need people in government who are genuine and care about people in this country. And that's what's lacking. That's why we're sitting here talking about who would do what for veterans. This shouldn't even be a conversation. Obviously, this should be something that's done. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Zimmerman.
Every politician talks about their commitment to veterans and their heartbreaks for our veteran community. Then the question becomes, what are they doing about it? You saw that inexcusable episode in the Senate, passing legislation for those who've been exposed to burn pits and what they faced, and getting the funding for them. It took several votes, but finally got through. I give Senator Schumer and President Biden enormous credit for that leadership to get it done. But the plight of the American veteran is a national tragedy. When I first began working for Lester Wolf, he served in the Veterans Affairs Committee, and I worked on veterans casework, housing, mental health, job training for our veterans. And the crisis still exists today. The Northport VA facility last year, their veterans homeless shelter and their veterans housing facility lost heat and hot water for about a week and a half because there was a pipe burst. And it took a week and a half to get it fixed. They were literally living with towels and water brought into them. It was a disgrace. You know, when the Northport VA was closed, a lot of our politicians took selfies in front of the VA and wrote circulated petitions. I reached out to Congressman Mark Takano, the chair of the House Veterans Affairs Committee, and I met with him about it and discussed the crisis with him. He took action, and through Senator Schumer's leadership, we got the cuts rescinded, and the facilities are in place. We have to improve them. That's why I've been endorsed by Congressman Takano, because of my commitment, and Congressman Patrick Murphy, who served as acting Secretary of the Army, because they know of my commitment to Veterans Affairs Committee work. And if I do get elected to Congress, that's one of the committees I want to serve on. It is a national crisis that we have to address and rise above partisan politics on.
Thank you. Ms. D'Arrigo?
Yes, thank you so much. So I think for me, this is sort of, there's two pathways here. The first is making sure we're doing right by our current veterans. And there are many ways that we can do that. We just had a question on healthcare for all. I do believe that Medicare for all would help an extraordinary amount of veterans. When my grandfather was sick, and I remember going to the VA hospital with him, he had to wait extraordinary long-term time for his cancer treatment. That should never happen with a veteran. We need to make sure we're investing in affordable housing solutions for our veterans. We need to make sure that schooling and education, high quality education, is available, not just for our veterans, but for their spouses and their children as well. And secondly, we need to protect our future veterans. And the way that we do that is by stopping forever wars. We could take some of that completely bloated military budget that is almost $1 trillion each year, very little of which actually goes to help our servicemen and women or our veterans, and goes to contractors. We should instead redirect some of those funds into the services that would make a material difference in veterans' lives. So if anyone is really serious about fixing and addressing this problem, it starts by getting to the root cause of it and funding what would make a material difference in their lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kaiman.
Thank you. Certainly, we need to make sure that Northport stays open and has the funds to meet its obligations and provide the services that are expected. My experience is that the local governments, the counties, the towns, the villages, even to some extent the state, has the ability to provide services to our veterans. It's not just the VA, it's all of our hospitals. It's not just a certain set of doctors, it's all doctors. It's the entire system that needs to be upgraded so that veterans have access to the services that exist. A lot of times it's transportation. They need to be able to get from one place to another. And it's not just waiting for a bus for an hour and a half or 2 hours so that they can get to some other location and hope that shows up. I've created something called Project Independence in the town of North Hempstead, where we provided services for seniors. And here in Suffolk County, when I worked as deputy county executive, we've expanded that to some extent to veterans. And I think that's a type of program that should be grown so that veterans have access to all the services that exist. And there's a lot of goodwill, but they need to be apprised of how to get access to those services to make sure that they meet the specific needs. And a lot of times that's transportation, that's food, that's mental health care, that's the basic services that many people need, but it's heightened or in a person who's served and might have different issues, especially when it comes to emotional issues or PTSD or some other issues that the typical person might not have experienced. So I would focus on local government and local investment.
Thank you. Ms. Rasool, question number 4 starts with you. Millions of Long Islanders depend on Social Security. How do you envision Social Security remaining viable for your constituents?
I truly believe that we've been hearing for so long that Social Security is not going to last. Social Security is running out. I have parents right now who are retiring, who are both on Social Security, who both receive Social Security checks. And I truly believe that it's such a shame that, all of these people are New Yorkers, Americans have been paying money into this system, and that we're really unsure if it's going to be enough for people when they're ready to retire. Again, I'm just going to come down to I can't sit here and tell you that I know the economics behind this and that, this is how much money is there and what's going to happen. I don't. However, I do believe that the problem with our government right now is not that we don't already have the solutions and we don't have the right people in government voting for us and for what we need. Over half of the people representing us in DC are millionaires. I don't think that these millionaires care that much about the everyday person and their retirement and the fact that they're going to need Social Security. I truly believe to change and to have real reform in our country, we need just regular everyday people who are going to get in there and make the right choices for our communities. I believe that we can't have all of these millionaires and billionaires swaying what's happening with us regular people, because at the end of the day, we are the ones that are losing. We're the ones that are being pushed aside. And again, I'll say it, I know I said this in the last question, but the fact that we have politicians voting to privatize Social Security is a shame. It's a shame.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Zimmerman.
This is a question I get asked so often from so many people approaching Social Security and on Social Security. I've held town forums throughout our congressional district, and these questions come up quite a bit. And people are truly frightened about whether they'll be able to count on it as they approach retirement, or it will stay with them as they're living longer lives. And quite frankly, they have reason to be concerned. First, let me say I reassure them that every step that has to be taken to protect the Social Security Trust Fund will be taken as long as I have a voice in this system, and as long as if I have a voice in Congress. It is a non-negotiable issue. And frankly, but they have reason to be concerned because we've seen time after time, as the Bush administration and with the Trump administration, efforts to, in fact, turn it into a voucher system or privatize it in one way or another, or use it as a target for cutbacks. It's not acceptable, and it never will be acceptable. We have to look, frankly, at our overall tax code. The idea that corporations can hide their profits in Ireland or in the Cayman Islands is just not acceptable and has to be changed. Not happening yet. We went through an extraordinary effort just to raise corporate taxes to on the top companies earning over $1 billion, just raise it modest amounts just to get through the most recent legislation to the Deficit Reduction and Climate Change Bill. So we have to look at our overall tax structure. We've got to make sure that those in the top tier are meeting their responsibility. And we've got to take a look at the Trump tax bill and repeal parts of it that really gave giveaways to those in the top actually 0.1%. We've got to make changes there. But the bottom line is we can change Social Security.
Thank you, Mr. Zimmerman.
Okay.
I
was over.
That's okay. We'll forgive you.
Thank you, Melanie.
Yeah, I stand firmly against the privatization of Social Security as well. In fact, I've been working with my good friends at Social Security Works who have been on the front lines fighting for seniors all over this country to make sure they get the funding that they need. Frankly, I support scrapping the payroll tax cap. As Robert just eloquently outlined, we are in a time of gross inequality while those at the very, very top are exploding their wealth. And frankly, everyone else, but particularly seniors, are struggling to get by. The average adult, average senior citizen Social Security check is a little under $1,500 per month. And the average expense of an adult who's, a senior is around $4,000. So we can see that there is quite a mismatch here. So if we scrap the payroll tax and make those at the very top pay a little bit more into it, we can make sure that Social Security will be solvent for many, many, many years to come. I also support adjusting the cost of living adjustment formula so that it can better reflect the actual cost of living per area, which is a major issue here. As we all know, we live in one of the most highest cost of living areas in the entire country. And, you know, I'm just going to throw another pitch for Medicare for All, which would help senior citizens manage not only their prescriptions and their healthcare costs, but the cost of long-term care, which bankrupts way too many families in this country. So that is my plan, but, you know, vote. Oh, okay, I got to stop. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kaiman?
Yes, thank you. I think we should extend the threshold, raise the threshold for the Social Security tax. Clearly, people who make more can pay more or continue paying. It's not an additional burden. It's simply continuing what they're paying already. And those who make more should pay, continue to pay. And I think that would address some of the issue, especially when we should be expanding Social Security. Expanding the Social Security Act would benefit those in need. Social Security is in jeopardy. We have senators in the United States Senate arguing that Social Security should be voted on every 5 years. Rick Scott has a plan to vote on every bill, but Social Security included, to determine whether or not we want to sustain it or maintain it every 5 years. Senator Johnson proposed that we have that vote every year in relation to Social Security. These are dangerous ideas from people who may be in the majority someday, and we're all concerned that that day might come sooner than we would like. And so we have to take the threat to Social Security as something that's real. We have to believe that those on the other side of the aisle will remake how we deal with those who are in their senior years, trying to privatize it, create their own voucher system, or do something that ultimately will not sustain the system that we have today. We need to have a trigger so that the federal government will, in fact, make sure that Social Security is always secure and will always have the funds necessary. And I will make sure that happens if I'm a United States Congressman.
Thank you. Mr. Lafazan?
Sure. So there are a number of strong Democratic proposals out there, and they all come to the same consensus, which is that Social Security must be protected and its current trajectory is in dire straits. We have a moral and fundamental obligation to protect our senior citizens. And it's why, as a local lawmaker, I'm working to expand senior transportation and working to expand services for our seniors so they can afford and desire to retire right home here in Nassau County. We want our seniors to retire in place and retire in their homes. There are 13 years approximately until Social Security's funds are projected to run out. And what all these Democratic proposals do is they aim to make benefits more generous while increasing taxes on those most wealthy among us to pay for it. So what these plans do, and quite frankly, whether it's the Hirono and Ted Deutsch bill, making it so that a deceased beneficiary's family no longer has to return their last benefit check, or the Elizabeth Warren bill, calling for giving beneficiaries an extra, I believe it's $2,400 a year, or that's $200 a month, or the John Larson bill, which includes provisions to improve benefits for widows and widowers. And finally, we need to change the way Social Security and those annual cost of living adjustments are measured to the Consumer Price Index for the Elderly, or CPI-E, because right now the equation is not working. So there's so much we need to do, and I think we could take a blend from those proposals and put forth something that's going to protect our seniors and that's going to make sure that Social Security is around for generation after generation. We have no other choice but to do so.
Thank you. Question number 5, Mr. Zimmerman, starts with you. What is your assessment of the recent military budget passed by Congress? And what view do you have of the role of military spending and national security in coming years? You're on mute, sir.
Someone keeps muting me. Okay. The last military budget that was presented, but that was voted on before Congress, was actually, I believe, $25 billion higher than the Biden administration requested. And you have to wonder why. A lot of that has to do with military contractors and military lobbyists. And so we have to look at that very closely. Obviously, we have to make sure our military budget is strong and intact. We see how essential it is, especially in terms of our response to the crisis in the Ukraine. And I must give the Biden administration enormous credit for the way they are playing an important role in terms of holding our European allies and NATO together, and keeping that balance and standing up to Russia and Vladimir Putin's autocratic, murderous invasion of the country. So while we have to keep our military budget very strong and solid and keep our commitments to our allies around the world, including Israel, including our European allies, including those countries that are facing the threat of tremendous domestic unrest or turmoil or terrorism, we have to have much greater scrutiny as to why this budget exceeds even what the Department of Defense and the Biden administration request, because there certainly is a lot of examples there of egregious spending that is really linked more to contractors than to our national defense.
Thank you. Ms. D'Arrigo?
Thank you. I think I addressed this a little bit in the previous veterans question, but I'll certainly take a little bit more time. Look, I think it's important to understand that over half of discretionary spending in Congress goes toward our military budget. No one bats an eye. No one asks how are we going to pay for it, even though it is the largest or one of the largest budgetary items. And as Robert pointed out, much of this money goes to military contractors. Billions more go for nuclear weapons in the Energy Department, military activities, as well as even secretive agencies. We definitely need more transparency into the process. I believe that we should have very clear line items detailing where this money is going so that we can track it. U.S. military spending dwarfs the cost of most infrastructure and social needs spending legislation. And frankly, every single one of us should be questioning as people are homeless on the street, as kids are going to bed hungry, as people can't get the health care they need. We continue to throw countless amounts of money into this mysterious pit where there's no transparency. I am absolutely in favor of decreasing the military budget. Let's understand where that money is going. Let's take care of our veterans and let's take care of the people of this country, not the corporate profiteers, not the weapons manufacturers that are frankly funding many of these congressional representatives who are voting for the very same budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kaiman.
Thank you. Senator Truman, during World War II, created a committee to oversee military spending. It was out of control, and there was a sense that even in wartime, there needs to be some level of oversight and auditing. And I think while that exists on paper, we lose and have lost, in many respects, control over it. People are fighting in Congress many times over to overfund certain military projects and expenditures. And I think that there is much room for those of us who have the ability to understand and delve into it to see how we can hold people accountable, reduce costs, make sure that the money is not being wasted. Certainly, we need to maintain our strength in the world. The world is a dangerous place. Look what's going on in Ukraine and Russia. But part of being able to defend ourselves against danger in the world is also investing money at home. It's investing money in alternative energy, so we're not relying on oil. It's making sure, as we've done recently, building our own semiconductor and chip factories here so that we're not relying on Taiwan or other areas if there's disruptions there. We need to make sure that we have the ability to defend ourselves and promote peace and strength throughout the world, but we should not be wasting money. We should not be creating volatile situations in the world that undermine stability. And so I think there's a lot of room for us to save money and to have an impact on our military budget.
Thank you. Mr. Lafazan, please.
There is no greater responsibility that Congress has than to evaluate the appropriations needed to give our armed forces the tools they need to protect us here at home. So of course we should ban contractors from donating to politicians to bring more accountability. But I want to speak technically about the defense budget and where I think we need to go as a nation. I think we need to take lessons from the war in Ukraine on the new types of weaponry that are working. We know those Javelin anti-tank weapons, those portable anti-tank weapons are working. We know the Stinger portable air defense missiles are working, and they're effective for those low altitude, high speed aircraft. The self-propelled howitzers, the artillery that can fire on high trajectories, thus following a precision attack via GPS on a long-range target, and then move its position autonomously to avoid return fire. And those Switchblade drones, right? These autonomous drones that are guided remotely to detonate at enemy targets. So these weapons are working. We need to continue to advance manufacturing and research and design. We need to take note of China's demonstrations around Taiwan. We need to bolster Taiwan's porcupine defense, right? The ability to use small arms to protect itself against a greater enemy and protect Taiwan against a potential blockade. And we need to maintain our supercomputing advantage. And lastly, we have to boost cyber defense. We have to protect public infrastructure like bridges and power grids and streetlights, which are susceptible to cyber attacks. And we have to protect the private data of our citizens. So I plan to work with my colleagues in Congress to make sure that our armed forces have the tools they need to keep us safe here at home.
Thank you. Ms. Rasool?
Thank you so much. I really would really recommend for everyone on this Zoom, if you have not, to just Google a pie chart of the budget of this country and how we spend money. My mind is blown when I look at that pie chart and I see how much we're spending on, this military defense budget, which is more than any modernized country in the world tenfold. And I'm not saying that, we don't need a strong military. I think we are so lucky that we have a strong military. We have to always fund our military, but does it make any sense that we have this bloated military budget, as Mr. Zimmerman said, $25 million more than President Biden even wanted. And we're fighting for veterans healthcare after that? It's all upside down. And I think it all comes down to where our politicians are getting funding from. Where is the money coming from? We need to, I personally feel that our country, America, has become like, this woman who's just given and given and given and has nothing left. And we're just giving and there's no accountability. And I think we have to look inwards. I think we need to take some of that money, invest in our future, invest in our children, invest in education, Medicare for all. I truly believe that we need to get people in government that are not bought and are not, paid for by military lobbyists. And I think that's our biggest problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. D'Arrigo, question number 6. It's a little multifaceted, but it'll give you all enough to chat about. Let's talk now about your position on Israel. There are the recent attacks on Israel by Islamic Jihad. There's the Hamas organization. If elected to Congress, would you vote to fund the Iron Dome? Do you support the BDS movement? And you're on mute, just FYI.
I was taking notes because you said it was multifaceted. Okay, so let's address the first portion of the question. Look, I think the first portion of the question, am I correct? It was, I'm sorry, you said my thoughts on it. What was the first? I got the last two. What was the first?
Let's talk about your position on Israel.
Okay, can you clarify what that means? My position in what sense?
Thank you. That's the question.
Okay, well, let me go to the others, and I guess I'll circle around. Do I support funding the Iron Dome? Yes, the Iron Dome is a defense system. Israel is our ally. We should absolutely fund the Iron Dome. It's my understanding that we have funded it. We last funded it for $10 million, and then there was a bill last year that funded it again. And it's unclear to me whether that funding needed to go through at that particular time or not. But yes, of course, we should fund the Iron Dome. Do I support BDS? No, I do not. My position on Israel, I find that question to be odd. Israel is our ally. I'm not sure what the question is there. If you're asking a question about the conflict, I'm happy to expand upon that. I've always supported a two-state solution, although, now I think we're in a time where we need to look at the future and we need to bring both the Palestinian people and Israelis to the table. And I think the U.S. role should be a diplomatic one to bring both people together to make sure that both people can live with safety and security. And we need to do everything we can to keep the calm and keep the ceasefire, because in sophisticated societies, we should never, ever have war. And good friends and good allies, that's what we do for each other. So I think if we're going to live up to, to those ideals as a nation, that is our role to play. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Kaiman.
Yes, I support our alliance with Israel. I support Iron Dome. I think we should not only fund the Iron Dome, we should replace the interceptors when they're used, and unfortunately they're used more often than they should need to be. clearly Israel needs to survive, and movements like BDS, which is an existential threat to Israel from one aspect of how a country survives, is really critical. BDS is a hateful movement that is trying to undermine an economy to drive Israel into the sea, essentially. And so, in so many respects, we need to fight and stand up against BDS, which when we're talking about divestment from Israel. I think that the Abraham Accords, other aspects of Israel are areas where we can grow and support and build alliances and help Israel build alliances throughout the world. I support a two-state solution. I think that clearly we want to have a Middle East region that has respect for the dignity of each people that lives within. But we also must make sure that if there is another state that emerges, that the people in that state would need to agree that they can't destroy Israel as a state. If your goal is to drive Israel into the sea, then that cannot be the basis for long-term peace. And so there needs to be some acknowledgement and acquiescence in Israel's right to exist. And until that happens, it's going to be very difficult to somehow figure out how to solve these larger problems. I do believe that many in that region do support a two-state solution. Certainly that to me is the ultimate goal.
Thank you. Mr. Lafazan.
This question is personal for me. My grandfather was a Holocaust refugee, and my family currently lives in Israel. My cousins actually serve in the IDF as we speak. So I am a proud, strong, and vocal supporter of the state of Israel. Here's what I've done on the local level. I worked across the aisle to pass an anti-BDS law. So any company supporting BDS is banned from getting a government contract. We adopted the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism to make it easier to go after folks who are peddling in anti-Semitism and peddling in hate. Not only did I host Stand Up to Hate rallies, but I also work with law enforcement to boost security for our synagogues and temples to make sure anti-Semitism has no place here at home. And here's what I will do. I'll absolutely work to support further military funding. The Iron Dome saves lives, 95% effective on land, 98% effective on sea. And not only the Iron Dome, but the Iron Beam, using this laser technology to use GPS to better intercept missiles. It protects civilians. It protects Arabs and Jews alike. This is absolutely an amazing military feat. We help fund it. We should continue to help fund it. I work to pass I'll work in Congress to pass an anti-BDS law in the US to ban companies who support BDS from getting government contracts. I'll strengthen the Abraham Accords. Countries who trade with each other are less prone to fight with each other, and the Abraham Accords are enormously important for Israel to gain economic viability in the Middle East. And I'll ensure that any Iran deal protects Israeli security and strengthens inspections and safeguards. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Rasool?
As someone who's actually worked extensively in the MENA region, including Israel, I absolutely stand with Israel. I understand the importance of having a strong democracy in the Middle East. I am 100% in favor of continuing to fund the Iron Dome. I think we've seen recently, unfortunately, we've had to see recently how effective it is. I have been very openly clear that I believe that BDS is absolutely a bigoted movement, and I am clearly very much not in support of that. I truly am, I stand with President Biden. I believe in a two-state solution. And what I really do believe is that, every Israeli mother, every Palestinian mother deserves to live with dignity and peace and send their kids to school every day. And my real hope is that, and I know that people, there's nobody in this world that wants to live in devastation, that wants to live in terror, that wants to live in war. My true hope is that the mothers of these children who are suffering, it's just not fair that they're the ones who eventually get to be in the leadership, and they're the ones who get to, actually negotiate their peace, because I feel that the Palestinians are being extremely failed by their leadership. And I can't imagine that putting children on the front line, and, I can't imagine that that's anything that anyone stands for. So that's my position. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Zimmerman.
This is also a very personal question to me, and regrettably, it's a question that has to be asked in this climate politically, because there are those from the right and the left that want to undermine Israel's security and find ways to compromise the Israel relationship with the United States. It's personal to me because throughout my life, whether I was serving as president of Great Neck B'nai B'rith or president of American Jewish Congress for Long Island, or for that matter, when I went with Steve Israel to the Soviet Union in the 80s to work on helping those Soviet Jews who were being incarcerated or being held in their homes. So they sought freedom and sought the right to go to Israel. We worked on helping those families be free. It's a very real, profound issue because Israel is not just our ally. It is our only true friend in the Middle East. There's the only democracy in the Middle East. And they truly provide great services to our country, intelligence sharing, for example, and other types of trade opportunities for our country as well. So, and there are those who want to compromise aid to Israel. They want to make it negotiable versus guaranteeing it. Let me be very clear, as a member of Congress, I will make sure that aid to Israel is guaranteed and not negotiated. Furthermore, let me be clear, I will support funding for the Iron Dome. It's essential. And yes, I support a two-state solution for sure. But understand, we're not going to get there as long as Hamas and Hezbollah continue to undermine any effort to achieve peace, as long as they continue to engage in terrorist activities that block any hope of a two-state solution. Yes, I'm proudly supporting Israel and will give every effort in my work in Congress to make sure that their relationship with our country is strong and true. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kaiman, question number 7. Many people are bullish about cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, and there are detractors who point to a major flaw that cryptocurrency mining is highly energy intensive. What are your thoughts on investing in Bitcoin and other new forms of currency?
Well, I think that the future of monetary future is changing, and certainly crypto is something that needs to be reckoned with. It's something that we in any level, at any level of government, need to have a clear understanding of how it's created, how it's funded, and ultimately the impact that it can have on our monetary system. We're looking to compete with, or China's looking to compete with us in other ways, using different types of currencies as well. The dollar is strong, and sometimes we reap the benefit of that. But cryptocurrency is, again, something that's here and needs to be dealt with. The energy component of that is a real concern. It takes a tremendous amount of energy to create it. There's discussion as to whether or not we should take energy plants and invest or remake them so that they can mine for cryptocurrency. And I think the answer to that question as to whether or not we proceed with that is one that needs to involve a larger community discussion. Our communities need to be educated, or the people who are going to be impacted, who are going to live near there, the people that are ultimately affected by the energy impacts. But that said, we do know that crypto is here. It's emerged as a viable form of currency. And so I think those of us who want to be in Congress, will be in Congress, need to make sure that we have a clear understanding of how it can or should be regulated and what the impact that it's going to have in our economy and currency throughout the world, and how it's produced, and what we need to do to make sure that it's done fairly, appropriately, and in a way that doesn't undermine our economy in other ways.
Thank you. Mr. Lafazan?
Sure. Cryptocurrency and blockchain innovation is central to American economic competitiveness for generations to come. Right, 1.7 billion people across the world do not have access to a bank. And what cryptocurrency does, the blockchain is an incredible innovation. It's this immediate transaction between two parties without an intermediary, with a completely accessible and up-to-date accurate ledger, all without the requirement of a middleman. It provides the same technological opportunities that the internet did back in 1983. So we have to move quickly here. And President Biden signed the executive order on March 9th to basically formulate a comprehensive digital strategy on putting together a secure regulatory framework. This is so important for the United States. It's important in terms of job creation, that some of the largest companies in the history of the world, birthed in Silicon Valley, wouldn't have been possible without the United States and our investment to make sure we had the internet capability set up. I will tell you that young people and young professionals all across the world who are building startups and blockchain innovation should be able to come here. We should modernize the Wi-Fi and the broadband capabilities of our government buildings to make sure that everyone who wants to trade crypto, and quite frankly, blockchain, and I know this is heady stuff, but blockchain, right? It has applicability outside of cryptocurrency, right? The idea that two people can exchange in goods or services without an intermediary has the opportunity to change the lives of billions of people across the world. And so I absolutely support crypto, and I think we need to move with haste. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Rasool?
This is how I feel about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. I think a lot of people look at it as something that has democratized our investment system, that, people look at our stock exchange and, they say that maybe this isn't for everyone. It's not understandable for everyone. I think that's what young people get so excited about when we talk about the blockchain, when we talk about Bitcoin. However, I think we have to look at the insane carbon footprint that is, generated by Bitcoin mining. There's a reason it's been banned in China. There's a reason it's been banned in India. I truly think, though, that we can't just cut ourselves out. I think that would be not smart for business anywhere. I mean, I live in Jericho. My neighbors, they actually run a service where they have facilities that mine Bitcoin. They had to take that out of New York because of what was happening here legally in the state assembly. And now they're doing that and making all these jobs and all of this in Michigan. They've taken their entire business to Michigan. So what I truly feel we need to do is, A, the SEC has started, but I think they really have to get in and dig deep, and it has to be, cryptocurrency needs to be better regulated. But B, I think that we should be putting, government money into green ways of being able to energize crypto mining. And again, as Mr. Lafazan said, this would be an investment for the future. I don't think that we can just cut everything out, because I think we would be missing out on a lot of business. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Zimmerman?
When I hear Josh's enthusiasm for cryptocurrency and his need, as he said, to move quickly on it, I'm sure it has nothing to do with the fact that two crypto billionaires set up a dark money super PAC, putting $500,000 in support of his campaign. But that being said, I don't want to be cynical. Let me just be very clear with everyone that I think we have to move very deliberately, not quickly, regarding the cryptocurrency movement and what it represents. I think we need to have very, very deliberate government oversight. I think Reema's correct. The SEC's got to dig deep on this issue and look at it carefully, and make sure that whatever's done is properly regulated and that consumers and users are protected. Likewise, we have to look at crypto mining very, very carefully as well. The carbon footprint is extraordinary and could be potentially very dangerous. We have to explore green ways to pursue it if that's possible. But we shouldn't just go in, as Josh suggests, quickly on the matter, regardless of other interests. We have to move carefully and deliberately, because frankly, so many people could be so severely impacted if our government was not being careful and was reckless on the matter. So I hope that will be the case. And I think we have to see how things develop. But it begins first with government oversight and being very conscious of making sure that we don't have a very dangerous carbon footprint as a result.
Thank you. Ms. D'Arrigo?
Yes, thank you. I certainly believe that we need to move strategically and carefully here. I have some grave concerns about the environmental impact that we know is hugely negative, particularly in a time where the climate crisis is the existential crisis of our generation. I have a hard time reconciling in my head how someone can be such a supporter at this moment of crypto and also claim to support measures that would protect our environment. It's sort of like oil and water, if you will. So I think that's what we really need to be focused on. Secondly, I think this is a really good example. Several of us tonight have touched on corruption and how it influences politicians, how crypto billionaires, for example, can come into this race and spend $500,000 on Josh Lafazan's campaign, who I'll remind everybody just registered as a Democrat a week before he jumped in this race. This is how corruption works. So to the voters, I'm going to ask you to not just vote harder, but vote smarter. Learn about your candidates, learn about what they stand for, because not all Democrats are the same. Some of us have been in this fight. Some of us have been on the front lines. Some of us just registered before getting into this campaign, while giving into this race, while donating, Josh, you can correct me if I'm wrong, money to the Conservative Party and the Republican Party last year, right? So we've got Democrats running in this race, but make sure you know which one you want to represent you.
Thank you. I have potentially two more questions and only time for one more question. And I know that all of you in your closing statements will talk about your 2 or 3 top priorities if you're elected. So I will ask the other question. Besides the Democratic Party, please tell us what other parties have endorsed your candidacy, either now or in the past, and explain why you chose to accept their ballot lines. And that question will start with Mr. Lafazan.
Sure, thank you. So running for local office on the school board, they are nonpartisan. Running for the Nassau County Legislature, I've been endorsed by the Democratic Party, the Working Families Party, and the Conservative Party. Quite frankly, many Democrats across Long Island have been endorsed by multiple parties. We should end fusion voting. It absolutely should be done at the federal level and the state level to make sure that candidates are endorsed by one party. But right now, at the end of the day, I'm proud that I was a Democrat who delivered on democratic values at the local level. On guns, sponsoring Nassau County's red flag law to make sure that anybody taken to the hospital for a psychiatric evaluation, is flagged for the police to make sure that we're taking guns out of the hands of those with mental illness. On abortion, working with Police Commissioner Ryder to beef up security presences at our reproductive clinics and abortion clinics so that no woman seeking an abortion or reproductive services is subject to harassment or abuse. And on the environment, making sure that working with County Executive Curran and my colleagues in the legislature, Nassau County became a climate smart community for the first time in our county's history. And we made a record upgrade to our wastewater treatment plants and a record investment in clean energy. So I'm proud that I've been able to deliver on democratic values locally, and I'm proud to be able to do so as your member of Congress. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Rasool?
I am only on the Democratic Party line. I have not been endorsed by any other party. When I ran last year for Oyster Bay Town Council, I was also on the Working Family Party's line. I'll be completely honest. I think that we make things extremely confusing for people. I don't think that our ballot lines, especially here in Nassau County, they're confusing. You go in. I mean, I actually live in Mr. Lafazan's district. I voted for him last year. And I have to say, it was confusing. He was on the Conservative Party line. We for an entire year, the Nassau County Democrats campaigned together last year. And it was, a very interesting experience for me because it was the first time I even understood that you can be on different party lines. I think that once you make a decision to be part of, one party and that's your ideal and that's what you stand for, I think that it's just, a little interesting to switch it up in such a short amount of time. But, that's just me. I am on the Democratic line and I'm proud of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Zimmerman?
Yes. When I was 27 years of age, I came home from Capitol Hill and ran for Congress, quite frankly, for a congressional seat they couldn't find a Democrat to run for against Norman Lent. I ran on the Democratic Party and Liberal Party lines. Now, the world has changed a lot, and those definitions have changed a lot about those parties as well. That was one time I ran another party line. But let me also speak to this issue we hear thrown out about democratic values, because it's a matter I take very seriously. I think especially as we approach the new Congress, being able to have a member of Congress you can trust to stand up for democratic values is going to be essential. So Josh, when you say that you stand for democratic values, yet you sought the endorsement of a group called No Labels. This is an organization that nationally denounced and threatened and attacked Nancy Pelosi. It's a group that actually condemned the January 6th committee hearings led by Congressman Bernie Thompson and Congresswoman Liz Cheney. They condemned them as being too partisan. That's not standing for democratic values. When you embrace the Conservative Party and finance them and sent them donations, a Conservative Party that defended Donald Trump, supported the NRA, was anti-gay and anti-women, that's not defining democratic values. That's political opportunism. So I'm proud to be a candidate for Congress, and you know what my values are, because you know how I live my life. You know the principles that define my life. And you'll have confidence that if I am given the privilege of going to Congress, I'll be standing up to protect our democracy, standing up for the LGBTQ plus community, standing up against gun violence in the NRA, standing up for women's reproductive freedom. You'll know who I am, but you'll know what my work has been. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. D'Arrigo?
Thank you so much. Obviously, I'm here tonight because I am proud to be running for the Democratic nomination. I am equally as proud to have received the nomination from the Working Families Party, a party that fights for the many and not the few, the home of the progressive movement that's fighting for Medicare for all and serious climate change investment that puts working families first. And I'm very, very proud to be living those values. I think they're very synonymous with our party. It's why I always say I'm fighting to bring this party back home to our roots, which I think the Working Families Party, it really represents. And you're the second part of your question that I think some of us forgot to answer is why have we accepted these party nominations? I've accepted the Working Families Party nomination because I'm a proud working families Democrat. I am proud to be on the front lines fighting to bring power back to the people. Frankly, I don't know why anyone running in a Democratic primary would accept the nomination of a conservative party, particularly after Roe v. Wade was overturned and they were celebrating that choice. I'd like to know why someone thinks that the Democratic primary is the right primary for them. To the voters, we need a candidate in this race who knows which side they're on, our side. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a little power issue here, so I'm just very quickly, so I don't lose you all. Thank you. There. Yes, good. Thank you. Mr. Kaiman, excuse me for that interruption.
No problem at all. I'm running as a Democrat. I've always been a Democrat. I've run many times. I've been elected 5 times as North Hempstead Town Supervisor, always running as a Democrat. I have been endorsed by the Working Families Party many times over, the Independence Party at times. And years back, I might have been endorsed by the Liberal Party as well, as Robert has. And they've kind of gone by the wayside a few years back. I remember Jack Olchen from years ago. I've been elected as a Democrat. I run as a Democrat. I've governed as a Democrat, but I represent everybody when I'm in office. And I'm sure that that's the intention of all of us. But the important thing is when we're running for office is to know who we are, what we stand for, what we believe in. People have a right to know what the political philosophy, the underpinnings of our political journey are when they are choosing somebody to represent them. And so I govern for all, but I represent with a philosophy that is based on something that's larger than myself. And I disagree with the party at times. I disagree with ways the party might go too far to the left and sometimes too far to the right. I believe that we need to govern by making sure that people are protected and that we manage budgets and that we give people confidence that government can represent them. And I believe the Democratic Party can do that and has done that. And when we're successful at that, people will continue to elect us. And that's why I think my history is such that running as a Democrat, believing in the Democratic Party, I will be successful. And I hope all of us who run as Democrats truly are Democrats. And I have some of the same concerns that the others have raised as well.
Thank you. We will now begin with closing statements. The closing statements, you each have 2 minutes. Ms. D'Arrigo, please begin.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you to the League for hosting this informative debate tonight. I really appreciate the work you do. Listen, my campaign is built on the idea that change is not just necessary, but it is absolutely possible. These past few months have taught us that corporate money, crypto money has way too much of an influence in politics and way too much of an influence in Washington. And the only way that we're going to change that is if we elect new leaders with fresh ideas who will put people over corporate profits. We can have universal health care. We can save our planet and we can win back our democracy. We can protect our babies and children from guns in our schools, but we need to elect unbought, unafraid leaders ready to stand for all of us. We know that Democrats win when we turn out our base. We know that we lose when we run Republican lights. Just look at what happened in the last municipal election. To win, we need to energize the base. To win, we need to re-enfranchise voters. And I am so proud to say that our campaign has been hard at work for over a year, knocking on doors, instilling hope, bringing new voters back in. We have hundreds of first-time door knockers. We're so proud of that fact because we are giving people something to hope for. We are the campaign in it to win it. And we are doing it one door at a time. The road ahead from the general election to legislating in Congress will be long and it will be hard, but that is exactly why we need to elect a fighter in this particular race. We need someone who's going to be relentless in the mission to end the corruption and bring the party back home to its roots, protecting and helping working families. It's time to fight for universal health care, common sense gun safety legislation, voting rights, and reproductive rights, which unfortunately need to be clawed back at this moment. I am that fighter. I have been on the front lines fighting for this community, and I will continue to do so. I will be that representative in Congress, and I hope I have your support. And I apologize, Bacon wanted to join the debate tonight as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Bacon. Mr. Kaiman.
Thank you. And thank you to the League for hosting the debate tonight. As I said just a few moments ago, I'm running as a Democrat because I believe in the Democratic Party and what we stand for, the dignity and respect for each individual to have opportunity to succeed. I believe in the American institutions of government. I believe in our nation's democracy. I feel, as many of us do, that our future is in jeopardy. It's in jeopardy from climate. It's in jeopardy from the challenges to our institutions themselves. From the extremes of either side. I believe that we need to come together, find a place where we can speak to each other and recognize that there's ways to move forward. But denying a woman's right to choose is not one of them. The proliferation of guns, where there's more guns than people in our country, is a disaster. And we can see the results. We need to be respectful of people's rights, but we need to define those rights in a way that makes sure that those individual liberties are about protecting someone's choice and protecting someone's life. And that life is a child in a school not being shot by an AR-15 because somebody believes they have some affirmative right to carry that weapon around. The notion that there's people in Congress who are more concerned about the right of somebody acquiring a gun than the person that person shoots is really disgusting, and it's something that needs to be addressed. So I support a ban on assault rifles. I support the red flag laws. I support closing the loopholes at gun shows and all the other laws that are necessary to make sure that we get those guns off the streets and hold people accountable. And if you limit the product, we will eventually save lives. I believe that the court is going in an awful direction, and those issues that I've just discussed are examples of that. Certainly, we need to invest in climate and make sure that, like we just passed a recent bill that does, in fact, for the first time in a long time, address some of those concerns. I know that my experience at local government will help me navigate the challenges that we face in Congress. I know that the strategies that I've met, the people that I've worked with, and ultimately the goals that we all have collectively as Americans to save our country and to make sure that we survive in the future depends on experience and the ability to navigate the future in Congress. And I hope to be your choice in Congress this coming election. Thank you.
Mr. Lafazan.
Sure. Just before I close, I have to mention Robert's last comment was interesting, given he's made a living off befriending the Republican machine in Nassau and Hempstead, his firm profiting to the tune of at least $6 million that we know of. And he's donated tens of thousands to Republicans like Peter King. But I'll stick to talking about the issues because I'm ready to take my experience of winning elections and winning for my constituents to Washington. If you'd like to learn more about our race, please go to joshlafazan.com. Take a look at my record in the legislature, standing up to protect access to abortion, standing up to the NRA, sponsoring Nassau County's red flag law to make sure that we're taking guns out of the hands of those with mental illness and making sure that our citizens are protected from the scourge of gun violence, working to make Nassau County more affordable. And I'm a legislator who's never raised the dollar in taxes. In fact, we cut taxes last year in Nassau County and working to protect our environment and ecosystem. Please don't forget to vote in the Democratic primary on August 23rd. Of course, I hope you'll consider voting for me. It would be the honor of a lifetime to serve as your United States Congressman. I hope to do so come January. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Rasool.
I just want to thank you all so much. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for this opportunity, for including me in this tonight, and for all the amazing work that you guys do on a daily basis. I'm running for Congress because I believe that we need just regular voices like mine to be heard and have a say. I want to speak from a place of truth and honesty and true experience. As I keep on saying, I'm not a politician. I'm a regular person just like you who's frustrated. I'm exhausted exhausted. And I know what's going to work and what's not going to work because I've lived it. I could sit here and talk about how this is my second election and how I ran for town council and, all the lessons I've learned. But I think my true experience starts right here in the Jericho School District as a daughter of immigrants who's seen their struggles, who's had struggles of my own, specifically hardships that I know could have been resolved through better policy, better leadership, and better government. My experience as a small business owner, seeing how we've disgustingly prioritized profits over people. My experience as a divorced woman, as a single mom, having to rebuild my life and put my children first. My experience as a woman of color, being questioned and looked down on for every move I make. My experience as the daughter of a psychiatrist, as a mother, seeing how mental health issues have skyrocketed because we cannot pass effective policy to care for the well-being of our children, whether it's providing, appropriate health care or creating a better world for them to live in where they're not living in fear in their classrooms. They're not scared to go to school. A world where they can actually pursue their passions and become the next generation of leaders that we really need them to be. If you ask about my experience, I'll tell you that it's within my real world experience, using empathy, my courage and drive to do the right thing, no matter what people may say or think about me, and my genuine care for every single person in our community, leaving nobody behind. I have always been the underdog, and I've always surprised people. I am a woman after all. I am begging you, please give me a chance. Check out our website, reemaforcongress.com. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Zimmerman.
Yes, thank you, Nancy. And first of all, my gratitude to the League for bringing us together and for having this important discussion for a very important Democratic primary starting early voting on August 13th, primary day, August 23rd. Let me also say, Josh, just a little suggestion. If you're going to spread misinformation about an opponent, at least be the last person speaking in this kind of forum so that the person can't respond. But I don't want to spend more time talking about myself. We had an hour and a half of me talking about myself. I want to talk to those of you who've joined us remotely and have taken the time to be with us this evening. Because what I'm concerned about is how discouraged so many Democrats are that I visit with and I meet with. People who are, and many other citizens, worried about the future of our democracy, worried about the viability of what we stand for and what our potential is. And I want to say to everyone who's joining us this evening that I feel great, very confident about who we are as Democrats and what we represent. We are the party that is standing up strongly to protect our democracy. We're the party standing up strongly to stand up to protect women's rights with safe and legal abortion, standing up against the NRA and against gun violence, standing up to address the climate crisis, standing up for the LGBTQ plus community, and standing up for so many people in need. We are at a very critical turning point for our nation. We know that. We know it's at stake. And frankly, I've been honored by the support I've received, the endorsements I've received. And for those of you who are listening or with me, I thank you very much for your support. For those who are still deliberating and wondering about the campaign, I hope you'll consider my candidacy. In fact, I hope you'll allow me to earn your trust and confidence, and you'll reach our campaign with any questions you might have. Because this is an important decision, not just about any one of us individually, it's about the values and the energy and commitment we're going to bring to Washington at a time that I believe is the most defining time for our democracy since the Civil War. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, candidates. The public and the League appreciate your willingness to answer questions from voters thoughtfully and candidly, and in civil discourse with your challengers. This is democracy at its best. Candidates, we appreciate your time tonight. You may now exit the meeting. Before ending the forum, I want to thank you, the viewers, who have taken the time to learn more about the candidates you will be voting for. Educated voters are the key to making our democracy work. A few reminders. The video of this forum will be posted here on the League of Port Washington-Manhasset YouTube channel, where you may also find the forum for New York State Senate District 7. Please note that only registered Democrats may vote in the Democratic primary elections. The deadline for changing your party registration has passed. Early voting begins this Saturday, August 13th, and runs through Sunday, August 21st. An interactive map of Nassau County's early voting locations is available on the Port Washington-Manhasset League website. If you want to be alerted about our future forums, please click the subscribe button below this video. There is also a link to the League website. Click on the LWV logo, upper right. Primary election day is August 23rd. Please remember to vote. Good night. This forum is now ended.